If I am not mistaken, I think that what we're going to talk about now is maybe not one of your secret loves, but I notice that every time we talk about Margaux, you light up a bit. There's something about especially Chateau Margaux.
Well, especially Chateau Margaux.
Yeah.
I think everyone lights up when they talk about Chateau Margaux, or even more drink Chateau Margaux.
Yeah. And just to say the obvious, there's a big difference between the appellation Margaux and Chateau Margaux.
Yeah.
Which is one of the first growths that's situated in Margaux, but still, there's many other producers.
And Margaux is one of the bigger appellations of these Medoc, probably the biggest one in Medoc, and except for Au Medoc and Medoc, of course, but of these more fancy ones. And it's actually several communes. So Margaux and Cantenac are probably the main communes, but you have more communes as well. We have the Cantenac Plateau, which is sort of where most of the top estates are located around. But you have a few further south, which of the more famous ones would be Dutertre and Giscourt. Giscourt is amongst the most southernmost, together with Dosac and Siran. Siran is not classified. Could have been, but the story goes that the family didn't really like Napoleon much, so they didn't want to be part of any of that stuff. And by the way, Syrah is wonderful, and sometimes they have vintages where they're absolutely nailing it as also wine which lasts for a long time. For example, I had 1955 this spring, which was still a lovely, beautiful wine. You know, that's 70 years old. So Chateau Syrah is something to really look for. In the southernmost areas, I think you get a bit more tannins. The gravels are not quite as deep. So I think both Dosac and Giscourt are wines which often need 10-15 years before the tannins get really, really more rounded. But they can age really well. I've had especially some really lovely vintages, older vintages of Giscourt, which are absolutely wonderful. So I've not tasted that much from Dosac, but so it's more of a longevity thing. If you think the tannin structure in a Giscourt is a little bit on the high side when they're young, just give it time, because they can age really, really well. Going further up, we have Kirva and Desmirail. I think both of them are a little bit more on the rustic side. Sort of the same with Dutertre. Dutertre a bit more. I've had some nice, more mature ones. Again, the tannin structure and the rusticity disappears more with age. So I guess that would be the case with Kirvan and Desmirail as well. Next to the river, Chateau Issan, one of the truly old estates. They made wine with another name. Issan is a more modern name, but it was called La Motte Cantenac. And Motte is like when you have, and they still have it, when you have water around the castle, and they still have that at Issan, so it's a properly old estate. And we know that La Motte Cantenac was served at the wedding of Eleanor of Aquitaine with Honorary Plantagenet, which 2 years later became Honorary II of England, King of England, meaning she was the Queen of England, and all of this became English for about 350, 400 years or so. And that was in 1152. So Chateau Issan made wine in 1152. So that's going on for now, 900 years or so that's a properly old estate, and this is in Medoc, so we know that some of these estates are really, really old.
Wow.
And a lot of these estates are really, really old because they were owned by the nobility. So we know that the estates have been existing for a long time, but we don't know if they made wine for a long time. But Issan has made wine for a huge amount of, almost a century, at least. We don't know how much further back it goes, but I guess when our Viking ancestors came there to try to rob it, even a few hundred years before this, I'm guessing they knew that there was some winemaking here, so not only up in Saint-Emilion. So I'm guessing there's some estates at least has probably made wine for even longer. The evolution of Issan in the last 20 years are tremendous. They have always made a charming wine, but in the last 20 years, almost 20 years now. Priory Shin for me is one of the, also a little bit more rustic, a little bit leaner style. I think the wine's ages a bit prematurely. On the other side, it's nice that some of these wines actually age a bit sooner and don't need 30 years all the time to develop. So maybe there's no reason to complaining. But then, of course, we have Chateau Palmer, third growth, another super second, one of the best wines every year in Bordeaux. Has made some absolutely tremendous wines. I've had some superb wines also going back in time. Absolutely wonderful 61 Chateau Palmer just a few weeks ago, which is one of their most iconic vintages. I'm a huge sucker for the 1989 Chateau Palmer. It's supposed to be even better than Chateau Margaux 83. I've never had a bottle of 83 Palmer that rivals anything. I've had some absolutely wonderful 83 Chateau Margaux. So, but that could be down to bottle variation. But anyway, fantastic estate. Now fully biodynamic, which they also talk about, meaning that some vintages they lose a lot. Together with, Chateau Latour, Pontet-Canet. I think Durfort Vivens now is fully biodynamic, at least Auberge Liberal is. There's a few who are. But it's way more difficult to be fully biodynamic here than in elsewhere, because with the climate, with the river and the Atlantic Ocean, not that far away, it's very humid. You have a lot of funguses and mildew, so it's more difficult than being biodynamic in Burgundy or Alsace, for example. Go on the other side of the plateau, so that would be Brancantenac. I just had a great vertical tasting. I mentioned that in an earlier episode of all the vintages of Henri Lurtot from 92 up to now, and you really see the development of quality. I've had some really charming vintages before him as well, from his father, but 85 is really charming from here, and other vintages. But the quality level, especially since 2009, is on a different level, and even more so since 15 and 16. Now there's definitely one of the best estates in Margaux every single year, and been so for quite some time. I'm next one over, which is you can see over. These are our neighbors, Cantenac Brown. I think they just built a new cellar. I'm really curious to see what they will do in their new cellar, because I think we will see in the next few years that Cantenac Brown will go up a level on quality, because their new cellar is just way more precise than their old one. Marquis de Terme, I think, is one of the... Okay, that was on the other side. I skipped two. But anyway, Marquis de Terme, I'm always wondering why they can't make a little bit better wine. The little bit on the rustic, little bit on the green side. On the other side, I'm not afraid of rusticity and greenness if there's a bit more concentration. I don't want everything to have a lot of a concentration being big and alcoholic. I don't think that's the way forward. But how to get a bit more concentration of ripe, not overripe fruit. And going back 2 steps, I missed the 2 Rauzan estates. Rauzan-Ségla, absolutely wonderful wines. Again, same story as a lot of other estate development since 2000 is just tremendous, and they're making absolutely excellent wines. Beautiful stuff. Rauzan-Gassier, their neighbor, I wonder why they can't make better wines. Bit too lean, bit too rustic, every single vintage. If I owned the Rauzan-Gassier, I would try to figure out what my neighbor did, because honestly, Rauzan-Ségla makes fantastic wines. Rauzan-Gassier is a little bit like, I would buy something else, to be honest, personally. Continue on the negative side, I would say the same with Chateau Margaux, another classified estate. I don't know why they can't make better wines. And Boyd Cantenac, same thing, just rustic and thin, always green, always, don't really make interesting wines.
It's a harsh place to be in that sense, because you're surrounded by so many insane wines.
we talked a little bit about this in the 1855 classification as well. And when you're supposed to be among the greatest wines on the planet, if you're on that list, you're supposed to be among the greatest wines on the planet, and you're really not. I would be a bit embarrassed if I was the owner. I also know that there's a lot of investment, there's a lot of money to be able to make the best wines. And after the big frost in '56, there was a lot of replanting that needed to be done, and people in some estates planted the wrong varieties because they planted what was fashionable, not what was correct with their soil. And maybe not everyone actually knew as much about their soil as they do today, because most estates today have done really great soil analysis, and that's a fairly new thing. So if you planted the Cabernet Sauvignon on your clay, you will never make a great wine, because Cabernet Sauvignon doesn't want too much clay. And the opposite with Merlot. Merlot don't want to have too much gravel. That wants to have more clay, and so forth. And so that could be a reason why, I don't know. And it could be funding. It could be lack of interest of the owners. Maybe you make enough money. Not everyone has the sort of idea they want to be best on the planet, and that's absolutely okay. And of course, there's not all of these wines can be 200 euros, 300, 400 euro bottles either. So maybe they have a nice market where they like to be. I don't know.
And they cost less also?
Yeah, they tend to.
Yeah.
The market price on Bordeaux is, if a bottle is €8 bottle, it's €8 quality most of the time, not always. It's if it's a 60 or 50 euro bottle or 150, it's sometimes you pay more for a brand, of course. You can get first growth quality for 200 euros. That's no problem. That's just buy the correct stuff in the correct vintage. But you can't really get first growth stuff for 50 euros. But you can still get really beautiful, lovely wines for 50 euros. Then we have Malascaux Saint-Exupéry. I really like it when I taste it. They're richer, a bit bolder style again. Maybe one of the richer and bolder styles of Margaux. But I tend to really like Malascaux when I taste them. I'm really curious about what will happen at Las Combes. Las Combes has a new owner, which just hired the winemaker from, well, not just hired, but a few years ago, but a former winemaker from Ornellaia. So I think we will see some interesting things happening at Las Combes. They have bought back some of their original the vineyards they had when they were classified, or parcels, because that's been one of the issues. Some former owners have sold out some of their better plots. So I think Las Combes is a very interesting property to follow for the future. A property that's definitely interesting, which has a bit of a broken history as well, is Durfort-Vivens. I think Durfort-Vivens is one of the most exciting properties to follow in maybe entire Medoc, to be honest, because the evolution and what they're doing is really interesting. They have still the Grand Vin, which is the top wine, the Chateau Durfort-Vivens, which in the last few years have gone, in the last 15 years, gone from being really good to exceptional, and in the last few years been one of the absolute best wines in Margaux of the vintage, which is really interesting. Then they also divided, so they make one wine with young plants, which is very easy type restaurant wine. And then they have this two sort of single, well, it's not quite single vineyard, but it's at least single area wines, one from the north and one from on the sides of the plateau, I think, where you see the personality of the different parts of Margaux, which is more of a Burgundy way of thinking. I think these wines are, first of all, they're very good, but they're a very interesting way of doing it. And the first wine is just getting absolutely amazing. So, and doesn't cost the price yet. So buy the last few vintages of Durfort before, I guess they will be more expensive when everyone discovers what's going on there. I know I haven't spoken about Chateau Margaux yet, because I'm saving it, but Labradors is not classified. I always find Labradors to be a very, very classic, lovely stuff at Labradors. We have, and not very expensive. You should find a bottle of Labradors for less than 45 euros in most cases. And you should, and then we have a bit further inland, we also have Arsac, which I think is very interesting estate to not classified but very good wines, and very classic style. And there will be lots of estates which I am not mentioning because there's a lot of estates in Margaux, and we don't really. This is sort of an introduction to Margaux, but there are other estates as well, which are probably worth to have a look at. There will be some very skinny wines as well in Margaux. So Margaux is a bit of a hit and miss on the lower levels of price range. You know, if you find a Margaux for less than 30 euros, you will find some. Some of them can be good, some of them are strange, some can be good in one vintage, not so good in the next, and so forth. So quite a mixed bag of both probably knowledge, investment possibility, but also with their vineyards. There will be all sorts of vineyards in Margaux, and then of course Chateau Margaux, which is one of the most sexy wines out there. Incredibly beautiful stuff, and oldest. I should probably have a separate episode on that wine, but oldest I've tried was 1884 Chateau Margaux. So absolutely charming, still served blind. I was still in Bordeaux, and I recall absolutely gorgeous 1928 Chateau Margaux, which I've had twice, both bottles absolutely singing. I've had 1929, which some historically said that was a better vintage, but I think I've only had it once, but that bottle was deteriorating. And the very, very charming Paul Pontellier, which was the director of Chateau Margaux, which absolutely everyone in the business still miss. He passed around 10 years ago, but everyone still miss him tremendously. So he was a person which really everyone who met him really remembers him. And he said that from his experience, the 28 was shining more. If you went back when he took over the reins with the owner Corinne Menslopoulos he was, I think she took over in the early 80s and in 81 or something, and he was hired in 82 or 83, something like that. He said that in the beginning he thought the 29 was better, but when I had the discussion of these wines with him, I think it was in 2012 or something like that, he said that the 28 had now surpassed the 29. So he had way more experience with these wines than I had. But I have had some absolutely wonderful old vintages of Chateau Margaux. And one vintage which always have fascinated me from here is 78, which I think it's either the vintage where the Menslopoulos bought it, or they bought it in 77, and this was their first vintage. At least 78 Chateau Margaux is one of my favorites of Bordeaux from 78, together with Leo Villascas. Two beautiful 78s, which are still really charming if the bottle is correct, because they're getting a bit fragile now. But yeah.
So how would you place the Chateau Margaux compared to the other? You actually had a really good run on that, where you compared all these.
Talked about that in the Pauillac episode.
The five number one, like first growths.
I always feel that Aubryon is probably more feminine, even if people are not supposed to say these things anymore. But I love those. If you read all tasting notes from old wine critics, which tends to be more or less only about port wines and Bordeaux wines, but sometimes you read something like, it's like the young ballerina dancing through the flower garden. I mean, that's a really nice description, even if it's I hate that sort of descriptions. Some people sort of think that's sexist, because you also have that sort of, oh, it's the old gentleman's bedroom, which probably would smell a bit of like old medicines and old cigars and lots of leather and wood polish, but it's still a description which I think wines can actually behave like that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
We're talking in images, and
yeah, exactly. It's a much more poetic way of describing a wine
100%.
than talking about just fruits and what some people call the fruit salad, which sometimes is a bit boring, but it doesn't offend anyone.
No, but still, like, you know, it's still very universal terms, like femininity and masculinity.
Yeah, if you talk about ballerina, that gives an image of something which is just, you know, light and delicate and elegant. So it shouldn't be offensive in absolutely any way possible. But no. For some, it seems to be. Yeah, and I think if there's one ballerina amongst the first growth, that's definitely the Chateau Margaux, which is just that you can it's not the case in all the younger vintages or more modern vintages, but generally it's also lower in alcohol. Always very nice freshness, very, very delicate, but they have a difficult period. So between 61 and 78, you can have some quite difficult vintages, and they don't have the best 61. 61 is the iconic vintage, but they don't have the best 61 either. But older vintages and everything after Paul Pontalier, especially, so 82, 83, 89 is gorgeous. There are so many gorgeous vintages.